Hey guys! So in today's video, I'm going to kind of do a tutorial slash walkthrough of how I draw noses. It's kind of how I draw them traditionally, but I'm just going to do it digitally, and also how I sketch them digitally, So I'm not going to show you how I paint them specifically, but this should be good enough for now, I guess. I'm sorry if I explain things weirdly, I'm not good at teaching, so if you can keep up with what I'm saying, I appreciate it actually. But before I begin talking about some stuff, I wanted to say thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, because I could actually put in a little bit more time and energy into a video. If not, I would have probably just talked about a random topic. So thank you to them. And if you don't know what Skillshare is, which you probably do because I talk about them all the time. So Skillshare is a website that has a bunch of different kinds of tutorials and talks about a lot of topics. It's basically where people with experience in the field or teachers teach a class and tell you how to do something or talk about how to look at something from a different perspective. And it's very useful for a number of things, including art. It does have a bunch of art videos, and I always talk about the stuff that's not really so art related just because I think they're really useful, especially for people who are starting their own business, and it's good for growing your audience, your Instagram, your small business, your store, that kind of thing. I think it's really helpful. And so everybody can take a class, try a project, and you can even make a class yourself if you want to, and you can make a little bit of money that way. But you can get premium membership, so access to all the classes for as low as $10 a month. You can download them and watch them offline if you'd like to. And so, as I said, I've been watching a lot of the more businessy kind of videos, not so much art, even though they do have a lot of good art videos on Skillshare. You know what I'm saying? So if you've watched my videos before, or you've used a promotional code to try Skillshare for free and you like it and you want to keep using it, so I'm going to have a code that's limited to the first 50 people who use it. That's going to give you 50% off the annual plan for Skillshare. So it's going to be basically like $5 a month. So if you want to take advantage of that, please just go down, use the code. As I said, first 50 people who use it will get to take advantage of it. Let's talk about how to draw noses. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is kind of dividing the nose up into simpler shapes, because if you look at anything in art and look at all the detail in it, you're going to be caught up in that and not notice that everything basically is made up of different shapes. So the nose is kind of made out of these triangles and rectangles from my experience. The bottom of the nose is kind of like an arrow or a heart. I don't know how you can see when I'm going to be tracing over some of these paintings that I've made. I know, by the way, there's not a lot of diversity in the angles of these paintings because I don't really make a lot of very dynamic digital paintings, but I do draw some more like facial angles and stuff in my actual pencil drawings and other kinds of traditional drawings. I just didn't bring those in. We're just going to be using examples of digital paintings. And as you can see, when I approach the nose, it's kind of like this gem shape. The bridge of the nose is a little bit narrower and it comes down to the nostrils. It almost looks like a triangle, but the top of the triangle is cut off because that's where the bridge of the nose ends, and at the bottom it kind of does a diamond shape. And so with that shape in mind, that's the way I think of all the noses I draw. I'll do kind of that gemstone triangle shape. Thinking of noses in these kinds of shapes will also help you determine the different facets and sides of the nose, and will help you with the lighting. So when you think of the nose that way, the bottom part, which is kind of like a heart slash an arrow, that part's, if the lighting comes from directly on top, it's going to be shaded darker than the point, the tip of the nose, If you have lighting that comes from underneath, the bottom of the nose will be lighted, and the top of the nose, the tip and the bridge and the sides of the nose, they're going to be darker. And so if you think of the nose in these different facets, it's going to be easier to learn where to put your lighting and your shading and how to make it look better. So usually I will use kind of a rectangular guideline, but there are some paintings where I've used sort of a circular guideline, and I'm going to talk more about the rectangular one just because I've been doing that a lot recently in the past couple of months. If you want to know how to do the circle one, I'm going to talk about that one briefly. But if you want to see a tutorial on that, there's a lowish like little video tutorial on Instagram that she shows how she draws her noses. It's kind of more like that style, and so you can just watch that if you'd like to. I can link it down in the description if you'd like to see it. But I'll just show you how I do more rectangular noses for this video. So the best way to learn how to draw noses from any angle and different shapes and stuff like that, it's honestly to use reference. I know you're watching this video to learn how to draw a nose, but I'm just kind of showing you how I stylize it, and how I personally do it as in my own art style. But the way I learned how to draw noses is, of course, through reference, and I'm not perfect at it right now, and I still use a bunch of reference when I'm drawing noses, especially from different angles. And so, of course, I definitely recommend using references. You're not going to learn as much watching videos from artists showing you how they stylize their drawings as you would from real life. So I recommend that first. So when I start drawing the nose, it's about the first thing that I draw, and it's just because it ties into the whole of the face as well. It ties into the eyebrows and the eyes and also the lips. And so I always like to have a placement for where I put the nose. Usually I'll draw the bottom of the nose, and then there's going to be those little sections, like little triangles I'm showing right under the eyebrows, where it's sort of like the bridge of the nose connects to the eyebrows. And if you look at a bunch of reference pictures or you see how people look in real life, I exaggerate maybe a little bit sometimes in some pictures. So yeah, I always draw the bottom of the nose, and then I draw those shaded areas right under the eyebrows, between the eyebrows and the bridge of the nose. And then I keep in mind the sides of the nose. That's another facet that is going to be lighted differently depending on different angles. Then you have the sides of the nose, which kind of go down to the cheeks, so it's from the bridge of the nose to the cheeks, and so it's kind of like a mountain, and then in the end I kind of connect the sides of the nose, like the nostrils, the top of the nostrils, with the part above it, and then the bottom little triangle. Very bad at explaining this, words, but yeah, it kind of, as you can see, I've divided the nose in a couple of planes, and they're all going to be lighted differently because they're all facing in different directions. The bottom of the nose, where there's the nostrils, is facing downwards. The tip of the nose is kind of facing forwards or pointed, maybe upwards sometimes. Then the part under the eyebrows is kind of facing a little bit downwards. It's not really, it's just barely, going downwards. And there's the bridge of the nose that is kind of forward, but it's not as pointed upwards as the tip of the nose. Does that all make sense? I hope it does. So I'm just going to be showing you on this one drawing how I kind of shade the different parts. So right under the eyebrows, I shade it pretty lightly, and the sides of the nose, I shade them pretty lightly. Then, like the tops of the nostrils, you know what I'm saying? I don't shade very, very, very much, but a little bit. The bottom of the nose, I shade the most. And this is from kind of like an upward lighting, how it hits, right? And then the tip of the nose is kind of the brightest part in the bridges as well. But of course, depending on how you draw, you can stylize it a little bit. Usually I have like pinker noses. I don't really draw super realistic noses in that aspect. I like them to be a little bit more red because I think it looks cute. But it's kind of, I keep these things in mind when I draw, and then I make purposeful decisions when I'm drawing. So dividing the nose up in planes is very useful to figure out how to draw it. And then you can always just basically change the proportions of the planes depending on what kind of nose you want to draw. I know it seems kind of complex to begin with. You're like, oh, there's so much science behind this. But as soon as you kind of figure out the facets of the nose and the different proportions of it, it's just going to get very simple. But this is just kind of a way to think of the nose as 3D. So when I'm drawing the nose, I kind of make this strange gem shape. And so the top of it, it's going to be where the highlight of the nose tends to stop, and then as you go higher, it starts to become a little bit more shadowed, just because between your brows, it's going to be a little bit more sunken in than the bridge of your nose. And so usually I mark that line because that's where the highlight will generally stop. Then I draw the nostrils, which you sporadically place. The more angular you make the curve, the thinner and bonier you make the nose look, while the more curved they are, the fleshier the nose will look, if that makes sense. Then I just place the sides of the nose. I kind of just make these weird little almost rectangles. They're kind of like rhombuses. It just kind of shows me how the nose falls on the face. And then I start to flesh out the nose and add a little bit more detail to it. At this point, I see where the shape is going and what I'm doing with it. And then when I add shadows to the nose, I always make sure that the very sides of the nostrils are a little bit darker, just because they go inwards. So the bottom of the nose, so under the nose where the nostrils are, and the sides of the nostrils are going to be a little bit darker just because they're all kind of sunken in. But then the tops of the nostrils, if you know what I'm saying, the tops of the sides of the nostrils, you know what I'm saying? Those are going to be, higher up, like pointing upwards. So they're going to be a little bit lighter, but not too much. They're not the highest point on the face anyway. They're a little bit lighter. And then the tip of the nose sticks out the most, so it's basically the lightest, and then the bridge sticks out more as well. And when you want to decide kind of what the width of the septum should be, usually sort of the septum and the cupid's bow are similar in size, and so you kind of use that as a reference. Sometimes the septum is a little bit smaller than the cupid's bow. It doesn't always have to line up properly, but in general, it's pretty similar. If you're wondering how wide or narrow to make it, about the cupid's bow. The cupid's bow is a little bit bigger. But yeah, in general, it just really connects to the lips and the eyes, and I think it's kind of important to talk about those as well. Don't really isolate the nose, just because then it'll be out of place. So there's like, I don't know if it's skin or muscle, but somehow it just, the bridge of the nose, right at the part where the highlight starts to end and the space between the brows, that starts to happen, it's a little bit darker. Right around there, the bridge of the nose kind of connects to the eyebrows, and it's a little bit darker over there just because it's a little bit more sunken in. There's not that much highlight going on there. And also there's a cupid's bow that you have to keep in mind. So both of those things really connect to the nose, and if you add that cupid's bow and that shadow under the eyebrows, it will help add to the realism of your drawing. Of course, be using reference in all of this. Don't just follow my advices on how to draw noses because it's stylized. This is how I like to do it. So when you draw these things, varying the different sizes of whatever you're drawing, like the nostrils, the sides of the nose, the bridge, those are going to help give the characteristics of the nose, If you draw the bridge very close together, you're going to have a thinner, narrower nose. If there's a lot of distance between the nostrils and the rest of the components of the nose, the sides of your nose and all that stuff, it's going to look a little bit more fleshy, as opposed to if the nostrils are very close to everything else. So the more space you leave around the nostrils, the fleshier the nose will look. So when I'm drawing different angles to the nose, I will take that basic shape at the bottom, which is kind of like that heart arrow shape, and I kind of just move it a little bit. That's basically how I keep in mind where the nostrils go, because I used to have such a hard time with this, drawing noses from different angles. I know I'm still not amazing at it, so don't bag on me because of that, but I'm learning. But that has been really helpful to me, just to kind of determine the basic shape of the underside of the nose. It's really helpful if you take a lot of reference pictures of noses from different angles and you kind of trace out the facets, just the way I did with my digital paintings at the beginning. If you do that same exact thing on just actual photographs, if you figure out how those facets look at different angles, and then you interpret them in your own art. Also, when you're drawing upturned noses, you will be able to see more of the nostril. A lot of times it's kind of hard to draw the nostrils upturned, and so the way I do it is, of course, using reference. A lot of times just using your own nose as reference, so you can grab yourself like a little vanity mirror or a mirror for your desk and just look at your nose from different angles and practice drawing it. That's a good idea. But for the nostrils, one thing that I've just recently noticed is that, the holes that go up into your nose, they don't a lot of times form like a perfect hole. They never really form a perfect hole. The most defined I've seen nostrils when a person's looking up is kind of like a peanut shape, and that's just when there's like heavier lighting. But I've noticed that you can see a lot of the flesh that's going up into the nose if you notice that. And so when you draw the septum and then you draw the nostril is just going to be a lot of times basically at the highest point, of the nostril. It's not going to extend all the way down. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not going to be like a full peanut. It's going to be like the top half of a peanut. And so there's going to be like more skin showing into the nose. So it's going to be darker basically right where the canals of the nose are, rather than all around. It's not like just holes cut out of your face. They kind of are tunnels. And so it's like the opening of the tunnel right at the bottom. You can still see it, It's not completely dark. Basically, downturned noses, you can't see the nostrils. I didn't really do a good job with these drawings, but the pointier you make them, the more angular the nose is going to be, of course. The rounder you make them, the softer, more fleshy the nose is going to look. And so next I'm going to be drawing kind of the circle noses that I used to draw sometimes, and I still do occasionally. But yeah, these ones aren't as much of using guidelines to draw them, it's just kind of winging it. They don't always turn out perfect. You basically just draw a long oval, and that is going to help you determine where the bottom of the septum is, where the sides of the nose are and what they look like, and then also what the top of like the tip of the nose is, kind of where it you shade it a little bit because the very tip is always highlighted, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, you can basically use that same guideline for all of the angles of like, round noses. So you don't really have to change the shape too much from that round oval. You just have to place the septum of the nostrils and all that a little bit differently. But you'll see at random points I will add like eyes or lips to the drawings just because the nose kind of needs some context to go with it. I don't like isolating it from the rest of the body. So you always will have to kind of draw the cupid's bow and what's that flush between the septum and the cupid's bow? You know what I'm saying? That little indent right above your lip. That always helps to draw it because it's gonna connect the nose to the rest of the face. It's not gonna look out of place. Also, drawing the eyes and the way that the bridge of the nose and the sides of the nose, how they interact with the eyes, because they do a little bit. When I draw round upturned noses, I try to still keep that round aspect to them, but I will implement a little bit more of that triangle heart shape that I was using before. It's just going to be more of a triangle right now rather than like the heart shape, you know, where the tip of the nose goes down, like the indent. It'll just kind of go up because, I don't know, the nose is rounder. I don't know, man. That's just what I do. So when I'm drawing round noses kind of pointing downwards, there's not too much shape to them. There's just a little bit of an indent where the nostrils would go. And then, of course, you can take all those proportions and all those like facets and start to tweak them. Usually, I don't really need the guides too much. I usually use the guides the most when I'm drawing, like sketching, because I like sketchy lines like that. But using a bunch of reference and practicing 24/7 on drawing the nose will help you not have to rely on reference. For especially different angles of the nose, well, at least you'll know how to stylize them and have it look pretty nice. So yeah, I hope that this was a little bit helpful. I'm not the best teacher, so I'm really sorry about that. I try to get better, but what can you do? You know, I'm not good at explaining things. But if you did like this video, I would appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up or if you subscribed for new videos because I put them out every single Sunday. If you have any requests for different tutorials on how to draw different things, please leave them down below, but if you do have one, please ask me specific questions about what to draw. So for this, I asked on my Instagram, what would you like to know about drawing noses, and I got a lot of questions for things like nostrils, the bridge, placement and size, that kind of thing. So I asked for specific things to talk about. So if you don't tell me exactly what you're struggling with or what you would like me to talk about, then I'm way more in the dark and I don't know exactly what to talk about those topics, you know? So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys next Sunday. Bye!